And I think this also, with this win, debunks a lot of ways in how to win in the NBA. So for Boston to beat the Mavs the way that they did, I think shut up a lot of people. I really do. And again, that stat of just that 5 game stretch in the finals, that being the worst 5 game stretch of the entire season for the Celtics says a lot. What's going on, everyone? You are listening to the Antonio Chauran Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Antonio Chauran. And as I'm recording now, the Celtics are now 18-time NBA champions. Yes, the Boston Celtics, as you all know now, or should know, just won the NBA Finals yesterday. No, 2 days ago. I'm recording this um, Wednesday morning. I'm going to have this out by noon Eastern Time today. I did a video, or not a video, but I did a podcast specifically for Spotify. If you guys don't know already, if you're just listening to me strictly on YouTube, I now have a Spotify. It's just strictly audio. Those are a little bit different episodes. They're more shorter, more condensed in comparison to the YouTube videos I typically do. Um, Usually on these podcast videos, I cover a variety of topics. Usually it's like two or three, so they're a little bit longer, right? Naturally, because I'm talking about more things. But with the Spotify versions, when it's just the audio version, I just really cover one topic and it's more condensed. So around like 20, 25 minutes. And these are typically, I don't expect this to actually be too long today, because I just do want to cover the Celtics and this overall season that they've had, and not really deviate too much from that. But obviously, typically the format I have here, it is usually long, around 35, 40 minutes, whereas the Spotify ones, though they're shorter, they're more frequent. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I will be posting weekly. And then every other Wednesday now I'm going to be posting on YouTube. Just is easier for scheduling purposes, and also with work and stuff like that too. So yeah, just makes my life easier. But I also don't feel too rushed in terms of getting content out. So even though I am going to publish this later today, I did all my notes for prep yesterday, so it's not like I'm kind of scrambling. I am well put together this morning. So anyways, let's get into it. Celtics win in pretty convincing fashion. And I had said on my podcast that I sent out on Spotify, um, Tuesday morning, I had recorded literally right before tip off. So I hadn't seen the game yet, but I was reiterating and very strongly supported this fact of my, well, not a fact, but more so an opinion of mine, that if Boston didn't win game five, I thought they were going to lose game six, and game seven was going to be a toss up. So they had, in my opinion, to close it out in game five, or else I didn't know how it was going to go. And they did it. They did it in convincing fashion. Jason Tatum had his best game of the entire finals with 31 points. Um, Even though Jalen Brown won uh, MVP of the finals, which, I don't hate, right? I mean, Jalen Brown has had a hell of a season, not just in this playoff run or this finals run, but the entire season as a whole. And there was a lot of questions around that big old contract that he got, over $300 million, and everyone was like, "Whoa, okay, you should pay Jason Tatum that type of money because he's your franchise player." No, I mean, I don't say no to JT being the franchise player, but I do push back on the fact that Jalen Brown shouldn't be given similar love and acknowledgement, because he played great. And I mean, and there were so many games throughout the playoffs where I felt like, in a way, he did outplay Jason Tatum. I mean, you go back to that game against Indiana where he tied it in regulation, and they go on to overtime, and obviously inevitably win that game. Jason Tatum had like 10 points in that overtime. But you don't get overtime unless Jalen Brown hits that quarter three to tie it in regulation. So, it was like a yin and yang factor where you got both Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum playing really well. in different aspects. And I definitely see Jalen Brown more so on the defensive side of the ball, trumping Jason Tatum in that aspect. But I also just like JT's overall game better offensively. So, the Celtics I thought played their cards right in terms of keeping that duo together. There were a lot of there was a lot of noise of breaking them up, where Jalen Brown maybe can get money from another team and he can be the number one. And I think it's natural in the sports media world, um, to feel like you really need to have that one bona fide star. And you could have a 1B or a two. Typically, people like that Batman and Robin type of thing. But in my opinion, I think on any given night, Tatum can be Batman, Jalen can be Robin, and other nights Jalen can be Batman and Jason is Robin. So, but I don't think that bothers them. I think at this point now that they finally got that monkey off their back of not getting a championship, now they have it. And I think going forward, they're going to have the mentality that look, we can win like this. And obviously, those huge, huge acquisitions, of getting Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis were huge. I think Kristaps, obviously, he has a tendency to he has the injury prone title next to his name, unfortunately, and obviously he got hurt in this playoff run. But in spurts, when he was able to play, he was able to play in the last game in Game 5. He was productive, and just having that 7-footer presence says a lot. And obviously, being able to give Al Horford when Kristaps was in the starting lineup a little bit of rest. I mean, Horford, he's almost 40. He's like 38, 39 years old. Him finally getting a ring. I think he had the most amount of playoff game appearances. Or, yeah, he had played the most playoff games without getting a ring, and he was right behind Carl Malone. I think he was only like, I don't know, 6 or 7 games behind Carl Malone in terms of playoff games without winning a ring. So he finally gets his too. So congratulations to him. Um, yeah, it was just a great game. So, anyways, I give you all of the background with that. I want to get into the game a little bit. So, I mean, it was Jason Tatum broke it open in the second quarter, and that's really where I want to start here because they started pulling away, and then I think at that point I can't remember what Dallas had, but Boston had 67 going into the half after a freaking heave that Mike Breen called to a T on the broadcast, because Pritchard was like right before he hit half court, just chucked it. Mike Breen said because he's hit a shot like that before in the playoffs, and he nailed it. Um, I think that was really the final nail in the coffin in a sense. And look, I know we still had a whole second half to play, and in the NBA, look, it's a game of runs. Um, no lead is safe, especially in today's NBA. But I at that point though, I just thought Dallas looked tired. Luca looked tired. Kyrie he had a horrible game. And look, I want to say this about Kyrie real quick. Um, I think we need to appreciate the growth that he has had over this past season. Since he's come to Dallas, he has righted a lot of wrongs. Um, and I think there's something to be said about that, especially given all of the narratives around Kyrie, really up until this point, had been stuff going on off the court, not on the court. It wasn't necessarily his play, it was just all of the stuff he was doing off the court. And to his credit, he acknowledged that. And it takes a lot for someone to acknowledge that they weren't acting right. Um, and with their previous self, right? So I commend him a lot for that because that's not easy to do. Especially when you're a guy like Kyrie, you're a bona fide superstar. It's hard to be at the top and acknowledge that you need to get it together in some way, shape, or form. Um, Especially personally, too, just how you present yourself. Um, that's hard to do. So I give credit to Kyrie for that. But unfortunately, in this finals run, he did not play well at all. And it'll be a learning moment for him. And it's funny to say because a guy like Kyrie, who's had all of this experience, he's an NBA champion. those runs he made in Cleveland with LeBron. And the fact that he can still say that he has growth, I think is it says a lot. So, I'm happy for him in that respect. Switching over to Luca, um, look, Luca's a great player, um, but he gives off the vibe that it's kind of his way or the highway, and that's not right. He's out of shape for the standards of an NBA player, right? You can see he gets tired quick. I gave him praise for playing better defense in Game 4, but he kind of reverted back in Game 5. And look, I don't know if some of that was fatigue. I know he was injured, and to his credit, the post game after Game 5, a reporter asked just how injured he was. He said, "It doesn't matter. I didn't play well. We lost. Blah blah blah." So that was a good answer, because it's easy to be like, "Oh, well, I was hurt, so that's why I didn't play my best," and blah blah blah. It's an easy card to play for a lot of players, but he didn't do that. So credit to him. But he needs to get it together physically this offseason. I don't know what it is about European players. Um, they can just ball, but live not a very strict life. Like you look at a guy like LeBron, right, who is 24/7 conditioning. What he eats, it's planned, it's precise, it's calculated. His workouts. Could you imagine a guy like Nikola Jokic, a guy like Luka Doncic, who have that type of regime, that regimen, and then also have the abilities that they do? Oh my God, they'd be unstoppable. So you never see those two collide when it comes to guys like a Nikola Jokic or a Luka Doncic. That's just me. I know a lot of people say that as well, but it is obvious. So I don't know if this is going to be a moment where Luka's like, okay, I can get here with what I've been doing up to this point. Just imagine if I tweak this and that, where I can go from there. I'd like to think that's the mentality that he's going to have. But anyways, back to the game. But yeah, I mean, it was, in my opinion, um, the really like a stamp on this overall Celtic season. It really was like I have the stats here, regular season stats of the 2023-2024 season. So the overall, and this is an interesting stat that I want to point out. That I'll get to it. Points per game, 20.6, which is second in the league. Total rebounds per game, 46.3, also second. Blocks per game, 6.6, first. Threes made, 1,351 threes, first, which equates to threes made per game, 16.5. Blows them out. I think they let that was like 150 more threes in second place. And then 3-point percentage, 38.8, which was second overall. And on the defensive side, just really quickly, points allowed, 109.2. Um, there's a stat that was said, and I saw this yesterday on First Things First. Nick Wright gave this crazy stat, and that just showed. I felt like it quieted a lot of different narratives, and I'll get to that. Over a 5-game stretch, take any 5-game stretch throughout the entire season, whether if it's the regular season, playoffs, finals. The Celtics had their worst 5-game stretch offensive production wise in the finals compared to the rest of the entire season. The 5 games they played in the finals offensively was their worst stretch of football, or I'm sorry, basketball, the entire season, and they still won. So just imagine if they played their season average 120 points per game. It wouldn't have even been close. In this map series, they averaged 101.6 points per game. And they still won because they held the Mavericks to 91.6 points per game this entire series. some narratives that can maybe shut up to an extent, because I know there's caveats with injuries and stuff. I say that because look, we look through this entire Eastern Conference run. They played a Jimmy Butler-less Heat team. They played a Cavs team where Donovan Mitchell missed over half of that series. Then they played an Indiana Pacers team that played them very competitively, but also were missing Tyrese Halliburton for about half or a little over half that series as well. And obviously, they didn't play these teams, but a team like the Knicks that were basically playing on one leg, but still fought like hell. A Sixers team with an injured Joel Embiid, an injured Giannis on a Bucks team. So there was a lot of injuries that took place in the East, and it was kind of wide open for the Celtics in that sense. Um, but that was also a reason why a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, here come the Mavs now." The Mavs beat a KD, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal Suns team. I'm sorry, no, that was the Timberwolves. The Mavs beat the Clippers. Sorry, the first round of the series. Now, obviously, Kawhi Leonard didn't really play, um, but Paul George had a great series. But they beat the Clippers. They beat a Thunder team that was 100% healthy. That was the number one overall seed in the West. They beat them, and then they beat the Timberwolves. Timberwolves, who beat the defending champions at the time, Nuggets, and that Suns team. So, I was a very heavy advocate for the Timberwolves, and I thought they were going to win. I thought they were going to make it to the finals. Um, so for the Mavs to beat them the way that they did, I mean, you could have made a really strong argument for the Mavs to win this series for the simple fact that their road to a lot of people was harder. Um, so for Boston to beat the Mavs the way that they did, I think shut up a lot of people. I really do. And again, that stat of just that 5 game stretch in the finals, that being the worst 5 game stretch of the entire season for the Celtics says a lot. Just breaking down the series, if you look here in that Cavs series, Boston averaged 108.4 points per game, holding Cleveland to 101.2 points per game. Obviously, beat them in 5. The Heat series, and I did this in reverse because I forgot that they played the Heat the first round. 107.8 points per game to holding the Heat to 92.2 points per game. Pacers series, 119.5 points per game to Indiana, 112.8. Obviously, they swept them. And just overall playoff stats, 108.8 points per game, which was fourth. 49.9% field goal percentage, which was also fourth. And this is all of the playoff teams. That's the ranking. Threes attempted per game, 40.2. That's crazy. 40.2 threes attempted per game. First, obviously. And then 36 in their three percentage, 36%, which is sixth, which isn't, it's not horrible, but it's not great either. Couldn't even make top 5. But again, with all of that being said, just the defensive side of the ball too, they still have that identity. And I gave Ime Udoka a lot of credit during that run because defensively, that was their playing card. And now under the regime of Joe Mazzulla, who deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to do with this Celtic team, they just shoot the 3 ball like crazy. And I think this also, with this win, debunks a lot of ways in how to win in the NBA. The Celtics had 4 of their players in the top 50 in players that were in the playoffs. Top 4, or I'm sorry, 4 players in the top 50 in points per game, assists, rebounds, and steals, and they had 5 players in the top 50 in blocks. That just doesn't show how overall good of a team that they have, but it shows the production that you're not just getting from 1 or 2 players. Because the whole narrative here, and we've seen it, We saw it with the Suns. They're like, oh, we got to get KD, Booker, Bradley Beal together. Boom, super team. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George to the Clippers. LeBron, AD, Lakers. Luca, Kyrie, Mavs. That experiment in Brooklyn with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. Then it was Embiid and James Harden in Philly in a third fiddle with Tyrese Maxey, who now has taken that second spot next to Joel Embiid. I mean, I'm blanking on some other ones, but those are just some examples in terms of how people were trying to mold teams to make deep playoff runs. Obviously, you have your two more bona fide players with Jalen and Jason, but they also got a Drew Holiday. They got a Derek White, who I'm hoping fixed his grill because he got slammed to the court and he had a chipped tooth, and it looked like that other one was kind of wiggling a little bit. But a guy like that, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford coming off the bench. I mean, these are guys. I mean, Drew Holiday, when he was with the Pelicans, I mean, what was that guy? He went to Milwaukee, got traded to Milwaukee, won them their first championship since they won with Kareem. Now he's with the Celtics. It's like this guy brings championship pedigree with him, and rightfully so, and good for him. Um, Derek White, again, coming from San Antonio, and then coming to the Celtics, bringing that defensive prowess with him, and just always finding a way to put up a three and bail the Celtics out of a bad um, play, a bad 24 seconds. You know, it's just always he always drains them. He really does. And then obviously with Kristaps, with all of um, the pedigree that he brings with him, obviously with what he did with the Knicks, then going to the Mavs, Washington, now Boston, or maybe I switched Washington in Dallas. It's okay. Anyways, he's been on four teams now. Celtics are his four teams, and obviously a lot of that had to do with him. I don't know what happened off the court. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but maybe personality wise, he didn't fit, but also just his prone to injury that played a lot of that. Um, but again, man, like this is a team, and they've shown and they stuck with it. I think that's the other thing. Like I alluded to earlier, there was a lot of heat around keeping this duo together or splitting them up. And a lot of people were like, split them up. JT is your guy. Jalen Brown, he's going to cause issues. He's going to want to be the number one, blah, blah, blah. No. And I think the fact that they held their feet to the fire and stuck with it says a lot. And I think it shows to all of these other teams that are wanting to build an adequate team and build them up together. OKC, the Houston Rockets, for example. I mean, these are teams that are young and on the come up. And they're probably looking at their teams and they're like, see, Boston could do it. Why couldn't we? Why can't we? And you can't dispute that. You can't, because at the end of the day, there's some things that are just always inevitable when it comes to sports. Injury. So if you're banking on your star guy being there or two star guys being there, one of them gets hurt, you're screwed. Because you don't have the depth. You don't have the team together in terms of having a well-equipped backup if your star players are out. And so I think when you build a team the way that Boston has built it, and I feel bad for a guy like Marcus Smart who wasn't able to win with them, because I mean, he was the heartbeat of that team. He was their vocal leader. And so obviously he got traded this past like it's been a year or so now. So that sucks. But again, it was a move that needed to happen, and they were able to bring in Drew and Kristaps and plug those pieces in. And again, credit to Joe Mazzulla for being able to make it work. You know, so I think they have shown, have a core group of guys, plug in, He doesn't need to be a superstar, but plug in a nice piece here and there, and boom, have a capable coaching staff, and there you go. So again, I get it. Injuries happen, teams get hot. You know, it happens, but at the end of the day, you got to give the Celtics a lot of credit for what they were able to pull off. And I mean, I'm not going to get ahead of my skis here and be like, oh, well, they can repeat. But I mean, if they're able to keep everyone's on contract till next year, I don't know if Al Horford's going to retire now. Now that he's got his ring, he wants to ride into the sunset. You can't blame him. But if that's the case, then all right, when you need to figure out your center situation, because you can't depend on Kristaps being healthy all 82 games and then going into the playoffs. So they'd have to figure that out. But honestly, other than that, they're solid. They're bringing all their guys back. Um, I look at every other team. I mean, all the other teams are going to get better. Of course they are. Dallas is going to get better. Minnesota is going to get better. The Clippers, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to try to get better. In the East, the Pacers are going to want to come back. Cleveland, I mean, who knows with Donovan Mitchell what's going to happen if he wants to stay or go. The Knicks are going to get better. They're going to get healthy again. You know, so the parity in the NBA is crazy. It really is. I think in sports in general, there's just so much parity right now, and I love it. Um, except for the NFL, because a certain team has been reigning for the past 5 or 6 years or so. But I'm not gonna. This I'm not. Not here to gloat, right? This isn't about Chiefs. It's about the Celtics. But anyways, so yeah, you got to give Boston their flowers. They played great. Jason Tatum had the best game in his finals career because that had been a really big knock on him, and for him to have it in Game 5 in a closeout game to win and get the title, I think was huge. So good for him. And yeah, so that's all I have for today, everyone. Again, credit to Boston. Again, I know my dad was super happy. And yeah, so like I said, in terms of scheduling purposes, this is going to come out today. But for YouTube, it's going to be every 2 weeks. So every other Wednesday at noon Eastern time is when I will be uploading on YouTube, and then on my podcast for Spotify every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern time weekly. So yeah, thank you all for listening. I appreciate it, and I will catch you all next time. Peace.